Instacart is on a mission to have you not leave the couch this basketball season. Because between the pre-game rituals and the post-game interviews, it can be difficult to find time for everything else. So let Instacart take care of your game day snacks or weekly restocks and get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes. Because we hear it's bad luck to be hungry on game day. So download the Instacart app today and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Service fees apply for 3 orders in 14 days, excludes restaurants.
It's Saturday, the 5th of April. I'm Mike Willer, and this was a week that saw Donald Trump declare Liberation Day, local election campaigns get underway, legal trouble for France's far-right leader, and tributes to 2 acting greats.
Grab a cup of something hot, put up your feet, and get up to speed on the 7 biggest stories of the week. This is the Standout 7 from the Smart 7.
It's news,
but not the news.
The news this week was dominated by one man, Donald Trump, and one word, tariffs. Throughout the week, markets fell heavily in anticipation of a trade war. And then, in a reversal of years of American diplomacy, China, Japan and South Korea announced they formed an alliance to respond to Trump's tariffs. While Donald Trump spent the week talking up Liberation Day, countries around the world were getting ready to respond with tariffs of their own. And EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen was warning that the trading bloc is in no mood to mess around.
Europe did not start this confrontation. But my message to you today is that we have everything we need to protect our people and our prosperity.
There was some good news for the UK on Tuesday, as it appeared Trump has agreed to the much-discussed Chagos Island deal with Mauritius, which sees the UK give up its last African colony but keep control of a key military base. Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds was sounding cautiously optimistic about negotiations with Trump and his team.
And the UK's national interest is in reaching an agreement. We have things available to us that are not available to other countries. So there are things available to us. It's not about sucking up to anyone. It's not about not responding. It's about pursuing our national interest.
Donald Trump took to the White House lawn on Wednesday armed with a series of giant charts as he set out to create what he called one of the most important days in American history. He launched a series of tariffs, 25% on all foreign cars and a universal tariff of 10% on almost all countries sending goods into the United States. Some countries attracted much higher tariffs, including Bangladesh and Vietnam, while China got landed with a 34% tariff, which appears to be added onto the previous 20%. But intriguingly, there were no tariffs placed on Russia. The US president warned that there would be a strong reaction to the move.
In the coming days, there will be complaints from the globalists and the outsourcers and special interests and the fake news. The fake news will always complain. But never forget, every prediction our opponents made about trade for the last 30 years has been proven totally wrong.
The UK only attracted the minimum 10% tariff, and some categories, such as pharmaceuticals, got exemptions in the current round. That'll be seen as a small victory for Labour and Keir Starmer, who've been working hard to build a relationship with Trump and his team. Chancellor Rachel Reeves was promising a considered response to the new tariffs.
The prize on offer is an economic agreement. We don't want to do anything that undermines that. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We are still in discussions with our counterparts in the United States, and the focus is not on posturing here.
Stock markets tumbled on Thursday as the aftermath of Donald Trump's Liberation Day caused shockwaves around the world. As Trump predicted, there was outrage and alarm from world leaders as the US announced almost universal tariffs against friendly and not so friendly nations. Trump says it will usher in a golden age for America, but with $2 trillion wiped off the value of Wall Street stocks and the dollar sliding against the euro, it looks like a high-risk strategy. Much like the rest of the world, the UK now has to decide what to do in response, although we're only facing a 10% tariff, and Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds announced a consultation process before the UK responds.
I am today launching a request for input on the implications for British businesses of possible retaliatory action. This is a formal step necessary for us to keep all options on the table.
The EU has had a 20% tariff imposed, which will cause more disruption between Ireland and Northern Ireland, and Irish Taoiseach Micheál Martin didn't sound too happy about Trump's trade war.
I deeply regret the United States' decision to impose 20% tariffs on imports from across the European Union. Disrupting this deeply integrated relationship benefits no one.
Away from the world of Trump and tariffs, the government announced it's aiming to crack down on crime as its next priority, and that includes crime related to illegal migration. The Prime Minister has promised to smash the smuggling gangs, and Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said there's also going to be a new focus on the so-called gig economy, which can see people without proper immigration status employed in takeaways or barbershops. Prime Minister Keir Starmer was on hosting duties for an international summit on Monday focused on organised immigration crime. He wrote an article for the Daily Mail in which he declared that people are right to be angry about illegal migration and proposed treating smuggling gangs like terrorists. The government has produced figures to show that they've returned over 24,000 people who didn't have the correct papers, and they've pledged to focus on illegal workers in the so-called gig economy.
For too long, the UK has been a soft touch on this. Whilst the last government were busy with their Rwanda gimmick, they left the door wide open for illegal working, especially in short-term or zero-hours roles.
The Tory Shadow Justice Secretary sounded like Starmer's claim that the Rwanda scheme would have taken 80 years to achieve the same result stung a little when he responded.
They've completely lost control of the borders. You know, the numbers coming across in small boats have risen by 31% since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. The numbers are now escalating. It is open season for illegal migrants and the people smuggling gangs.
Tuesday marked the start of what's been called Awful April, as British consumers face a range of price hikes across the board. With rises due for energy bills, water bills, car tax and even the TV licence, the opposition were on the attack with claims that the government is failing to help with the rising cost of living. Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride says that with council tax also set to rise, things are looking grim for the UK economy.
Labour wants you to believe their tax rises are not hitting working people. The reality is families face a double hit from this Labour government. We will all end up poorer thanks to their mismanagement and broken promises. We simply cannot afford Labour.
The Lib Dems were also on the attack, accusing the government of failing to get a grip on energy bills. But Prime Minister Keir Starmer was keen to point out that the start of April also saw a rise of almost 7% in the national living wage, which will see 3 million people benefit.
Wages are going up higher than prices. I'm not going to stand here and say people don't feel the impact of bills. Of course they do. I understand that. The question is, are we making them feel better off? And that's why the national living wage today is so important.
This week saw the Justice Secretary continue the government's running battle with the Sentencing Council. The dispute started after a proposal to introduce pre-sentencing reports for minorities in a bid to deliver what the Society for Black Lawyers had called equal treatment after racist two-tier policing for 500 years. The proposals were seized on by the Tories and Robert Jenrick as an example of two-tier policing as opposed to a solution to it, and the Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood moved to block the proposal. That's been described as a deliberate step backwards, and Mother of the House, Labour MP Diane Abbott, criticised Mahmood in the Commons on Tuesday.
There is a reason why the Sentencing Council is independent. This is not the United States. Our political system and our judicial system are entirely separate.
Chancellor Rachel Reeves was back defending the autumn budget in the Commons on Wednesday as we inch closer to the increase in employers' national insurance contributions, which is due to kick in on April the 6th. Reeves says it will raise £25 billion for the NHS, but as the nation struggles with awful April, the opposition was accusing her of putting more pressure on the economy. At Prime Minister's question time, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch was also on the attack.
The Prime Minister also promised that he would not increase taxes on working people. But even the OBR says that the jobs tax will be passed on to workers. On average, families will be £3,500 poorer.
Keir Starmer wasn't happy with Badenoch's reading of the report and was keen that she should read it through to the end of the 5-year plan.
She's so obsessed with talking down the country that she's not read the OBR forecast properly. 2077 up, 2028 up, 2029 up. And thanks to our planning reforms, the largest growth measure the OBR have ever costed.
The local elections are scheduled to take place on May the 1st, with local councils, county councils and mayoralties up for grabs. There won't be elections in 9 areas as the government moves ahead with local government reform, but with Reform and the Lib Dems roll out of their campaigns this week. Thursday saw Labour launch their campaign with a party under pressure in the polls, largely from Reform, who've made big strides since the general election. Prime Minister Keir Starmer was happy to take a swing at Nigel Farage's party.
They say they want to run the country. They can't even run themselves. You can literally fit their MPs now in the back of a cab. But they still don't know where they're going.
Apart from tariff wars, this week saw Donald Trump busy threatening both Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky over the slow pace of movement on his prized Ukraine peace deal. Finnish President Alexander Stubb was in London after a weekend of playing golf with Trump at Mar-a-Lago, and he said that sanctions on Russia are essential.
A strong sanctions mechanism is needed as an incentive for the ceasefire, which should be in place if Russia does not agree to the ceasefire or violates it.
Former US National Security Advisor John Bolton says Putin has played a clever game so far, but he's in danger of pushing his luck.
I think Putin has already received enormous concessions from Trump, conceding that the U.S. is not pushing for full restoration of Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity. What Putin has to be careful of is not pushing Trump too far, that he jeopardizes those concessions.
Tuesday saw Russia push back on Donald Trump's much-touted plan for peace in Ukraine. A senior Putin advisor, Sergei Ryabkov, said that Russia's key demands to end the war were not being met by the US side. His comments came as Russia has continued to strike at targets all across Ukraine, including civilian targets and settlements, and pressure from EU leaders has focused on Russia. Trump has been growing frustrated with Putin's delaying tactics and threatening new sanctions on Russian oil. But Putin's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, was busy trying to point fingers at Ukraine over ceasefire breaches.
Russia's energy facilities have been under attack all this time, maybe with a break of 1 to 2 days. The Russian army is observing the moratorium, which the president ordered to be strictly observed during his phone call with Trump.
NATO members gathered in Brussels on Thursday as President Trump's hopes for a grand ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine appear to have stalled. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio arrived in Brussels in a positive frame of mind, meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. Rutte was busy reassuring members of the alliance that the US has no plans to suddenly withdraw all its troops from Europe, and reaffirming his trust in the US as a NATO member. Rubio was also calling for calm and making it clear the US remains engaged.
A full-scale ground war in the heart of Europe is a reminder that hard power is still necessary as a deterrent. And so we do want to leave here with an understanding that we are on a pathway, a realistic pathway, to every single one of the members committing and fulfilling a promise to reach up to 5% of spending. That includes the United States will have to increase its percentage.
This week has seen Israel continuing to launch airstrikes on Gaza, this time focusing on the southern part of the Strip, targeting areas around Rafah and Khan Younis and killing more than 100 people. They're also continuing with ground operations, with Defense Minister Israel Katz announcing earlier in the week that Israel intends to seize large areas of Gaza. Those plans became clearer on Wednesday when PM Netanyahu announced that Israel intends to create another corridor through Gaza. This one is to be called the Morag Corridor, and it could potentially split the southern cities. The pressure is intended to drive out Hamas and force the return of the Israeli hostages. But Minister for the Middle East, Hamish Falconer, speaking in the Commons on Wednesday, was critical of the plan.
The UK does not support an expansion of Israel's military operations. Continued fighting and more bloodshed is in nobody's interest. All parties, including Israel, must observe international humanitarian law.
Palestinians are now fleeing the city of Rafah as Israeli troops move to create the new corridor between Rafah and Khan Younis, and airstrikes continue. Thursday saw Israeli PM Netanyahu in Hungary for a visit to far-right authoritarian Viktor Orban. The Israeli PM shouldn't really be travelling as he's under an arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court, but he planned to spend 4 days in Hungary, while his host announced that Hungary will pull out of the ICC as it's become diminished by politics.
Hungary and the Hungarian government decided that we should withdraw from the International Criminal Court. The reason being that we're convinced that this has become a political court.
Still to come on the Standout 7 in association with Metro, a shock verdict for a far-right leader and tributes to 2 acting greats.
Right after this. Hey Prime members, are you tired of ads interfering with your favorite podcasts? Good news! With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts, included with your Prime membership. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free, or go to amazon.com/ad-free podcasts. That's amazon.com/ad-free podcasts to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Welcome back.
Last Friday saw a 7.7 magnitude earthquake strike Myanmar, near the second largest city of Mandalay. The effects were felt as far away as Bangkok, where an under-construction skyscraper and other buildings collapsed, leaving dozens buried under the rubble. The effects in Myanmar were far more severe, with scenes of destruction in the city of 1.1 million people and a death toll that began to climb rapidly. The US Geological Survey's predictive modelling estimated that the final death toll could be closer to 10,000, and rescue efforts were complicated by the fact that a civil war is raging in the country. Richard Lloyd Parry told Times Radio that locals fear the worst is yet to come.
So even people who have homes that are standing are afraid to sleep in them, afraid to stay in them, because of the danger of further aftershocks and more physical damage.
Rescuers continued to comb through the rubble in Mandalay all week, although hopes were fading of finding many more survivors. The official death toll from the Myanmar earthquake is now well over 3,000 people, with twice as many injured, while the damage to roads and hospitals has made treating survivors extremely difficult. The World Health Organization launched an urgent appeal for support and requested help with blood transfusion supplies, anaesthetics and essential medicines. Dr. Margaret Harris from the World Health Organization says the situation on the ground is hugely difficult.
A lot of the hospitals have been damaged in the area, so at least 22 hospitals damaged. Several are so damaged that they can't be used. And there's a big risk because electricity and water supplies are disrupted. So that really heightens the risk of waterborne and foodborne disease outbreaks.
French far-right leader Marine Le Pen was found guilty on Monday of embezzling funds from the EU Parliament, along with several members of her party, the National Rally. The trial lasted 9 weeks, and the panel of judges sentenced Le Pen to 4 years in prison, although with 2 years suspended, and fined her €100,000. The real blow came, though, when she was banned from standing for election for 5 years, which could rule her out of the 2027 French presidential election, although an appeals court has now scheduled a hearing for 2026. She'd been the favourite to win in recent polls, and there was outrage from far-right figures across Europe, including Hungarian leader Viktor Orban. She spoke on French TV after the verdict.
Do you realise that on this fateful day, what this represents for our democracy and for our country, when millions of French people will be denied by a court judge without any possible recourse, the candidate who was until today the favourite to win the presidential elections? Surely that must shock and horrify all those who respect democracy and the rule of law.
This week brought the news of the passing of two very different Hollywood stars. Saturday saw the death of the man who was both the 60s heartthrob and the 80s king of the miniseries, Richard Chamberlain. The actor, who rose to fame playing Dr. Kildare on TV, went on to star in musicals and movies, along with classic miniseries The Thornbirds and Shogun. He won multiple Golden Globes and continued to appear in TV shows even later in life, including Will and Grace, Nip Tuck, and even Desperate Housewives. He came out as gay in his 2003 autobiography Shattered Love, and his lifelong partner Martin Rabbit paid tribute to him, saying he was blessed to have known such an amazing and loving soul. He passed away aged 90 in his home state of Hawaii, and he spoke back in 2022 about how grateful he was for the life he had lived. Rest in peace, Richard.
Gosh, many aspects of Kildare were wonderful in that it was just such a new, amazing experience. Not everybody I'm going to cry now, in life gets their absolute wishes answered. You know, it doesn't happen to that many people. I'm so grateful for it.
Then, early on Wednesday, the death was announced of American actor Val Kilmer. The star of Top Gun was 65 and, according to his daughter Mercedes, died of pneumonia, although he had famously battled throat cancer in 2014. He was a huge star in the 90s, playing Batman opposite Jim Carrey in Batman Forever and Jim Morrison in Oliver Stone's The Doors. He also managed to steal quite a few scenes in the epic Heat, despite playing alongside Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. He battled throat cancer and recovered, although procedures damaged his vocal cords and left him struggling to speak at times. And he made an appearance in Top Gun Maverick in 2022, which turned out to be his final film appearance. He spoke back in 2002 about his reluctance to face the spotlight and his focus on his work. Rest in peace, Val.
For a long time with interviews, I was afraid. I was just nervous or afraid that somehow my own life would get given away, because you give so much in acting, or at least I don't really like the kind of storytelling that doesn't cost something.
You've been listening to The Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Hit that follow button and have a great day. Give us 7 minutes, we'll give you the world.
Ever wonder what your lashes are destined for? The cards have spoken. Maybelline New York Mascara does it all. Whether you crave fully fan lashes with Lash Sensational, big, bold volume from the Colossal, a dramatic lift with Falsies Lash Lift, or natural-looking volume from Great Lash, your perfect lash future awaits. Manifest your best mascara today. Shop Maybelline New York and discover your lash destiny. Shop now at Walmart.